I think when I was in the military, I was the type of person that probably lacked some empathy. Like I was constantly training to go fight and win wars. But then when I became a police officer, you deal with situations that are very sad, the loss of loved ones, and then many a times you're the only person there, and so I had to learn to be an empathetic and understanding person, and how to connect with people.
Welcome to Shaping the Basin. Today's guest is Andy Nichols. Commissioner Nichols, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn a little bit from you today, but I'm going to jump in with some audience questions. We ask our audience all the time if they have questions for you. So one of them was, what is something about being a commissioner that you didn't expect?
The volume of communications. Every day when I get to work, I have anywhere from some days 20 in the morning to some days over 100 emails, and then the phone calls all the time. Um, and I'm still working on striking a kind of work-life balance. These are conversations my wife and I have had, because I have found myself on the phone until 9, 10 o'clock every night. And that is not necessarily fair to my family all of the time. So I'm working on it. I set some hard rules this week, actually, that at 7 o'clock I'm done, and the phone's going off unless it's one of my colleagues in an emergency of some sort. So I didn't expect the amount of time I would be on the phone and responding to a lot of communications.
Speaking of the emails, do you have a rule for yourself? Do you try to respond to every one of them?
I do. I have made it a hard and fast point that I will interact with every citizen that wants to interact with me. Be it a meeting in my office, they drop by the office, they email me, or they call me. I will absolutely return the call, return the email, or meet with them, or all three sometimes. So,
Do you feel like you've been able to, let's see, you've been a commissioner for about 6 months.
yes.
Feel like you've been able to do that a little bit like it's drinking from the fire hose?
It definitely is drinking from the fire hose, but also the citizen engagement and involvement probably teaches me the most. It really gives me kind of the pulse of what people are thinking, and their relationship with government, their understanding of how things work.
Very good. Um, what frustrates you as a commissioner?
What frustrates me the most is people's lack of understanding of how local government works and what local government can and can't do. I think if I had one wish here in the last 6 months, it's that maybe our high school education system taught a class specifically on city and county government, because a lot of times people are reaching out for things that aren't necessarily in the control of the county government. And when you try to explain that to them, people get frustrated. So I do take a lot of calls where I'm just explaining how government works, and how authorities are divided. There's lots of elected officials in Klamath County, and just because I'm a county commissioner doesn't mean I have control or influence over another elected's office. And that can be very frustrating to explain to the public at times.
Can you give me an example of something you get phone calls about that is not in your wheelhouse or something that commissioners can do?
Absolutely. I got one this morning that was related to both the district attorney's office and the sheriff's office. And I explained to this individual, that I hear everything they're saying. I understand where they're coming from. And I offered that I will go have conversations with those two offices on their behalf, but ultimately they were going to need to have a conversation with the actual person that has the authority, i.e., the sheriff and the district attorney. And some people don't like that. I understand that, but I also understand that I need to be careful that I'm not speaking on behalf of the sheriff or any other elected, or trying to give the image that I run their office, because I don't. I just control the purse strings of their office.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of purse strings? That's our next audience question. Obviously, it's been in the news about the budget issues that we are facing. And so, one of the questions was if you can share any of the specific actions or strategies you plan to take to deal with that deficit.
Yes. So I see the budget as having two major issues. One is a flat general fund issue. We are a little over $1 million upside down in our general fund. And that is also using all road fund dollars to pay for the patrol function of law enforcement, which is 5.5 billion. So that's about 6.5, $7 million ish that we're upside down in our general fund. We have patched that by borrowing 5.5 million, not borrowing, spending $5.5 million of federal road fund dollars to prop up the patrol function at the sheriff's office, and just over another million just for the general fund in general to prop up. So those are the two problems: the general fund issue and how do we pay for patrol moving forward. Um, we are actively working in many areas to try to stabilize that. One of the biggest problems I see is the amount of pressure for us to deliver these services and the lack of cooperation from the state of Oregon. And there are multiple areas that the state of Oregon mandates a specific service, how a service is delivered, and what that service costs. But that doesn't take into account what it actually costs as far as the rising cost of employees and wages and energy and all these things that impact the cost of government as well. Um, you combine that with public safety. Everybody knows that's kind of my area, my thing that I want to work on. The state has cut the budgets for the Department of Corrections, which is our community corrections budget. So we're going to be losing probation officers and potentially some jail funding and victim services funding. And so you take things like that where the state government is cutting back how they help us. Measure 5 and Measure 50 fix the property tax rate, so we have no way to generate more revenue to the county. So as the cost of doing government, buying vehicles, paying wages, keeping the lights on, as that continues to rise and rise and rise, the revenues we have stay flat. We're not getting any more revenues. So then we get put in the really hard position of which services do we choose to cut from the public. And if you watched our budget hearings this year, I think the first salvo of that was fired off, and the animal control function of county government was cut out of the general fund. And that was kind of the first. I don't want to say small because I think it is a huge issue. Now we have to get animal control to run on just the revenues they receive from dog licenses, which means we no longer pay for an enforcement arm of animal control. There used to be a dedicated enforcement piece of animal control that would go out and catch the dogs and do the livestock hearings and investigate the chickens that got eaten by dogs. That piece is no longer funded in our county. So choosing which services we cut is rough. And as we move forward, I see that becoming a much tougher and tougher decision. The juvenile department, we had a plan using a state grant to fund the juvenile department over the next biennium. We had full assurances from the Oregon Health Authority that this grant would come through. The juvenile director came to us last week and said there has been a delay, and the state has put a pause on the grant. So we're facing again potentially cutting services to the juvenile department because there just wasn't the money, and we were really, really relying on this state grant to fund that juvenile department. So what ideas and what are we doing to try to right the ship, so to say? I just pushed out yesterday. So we have a local public safety coordinating council that consists of citizens, the district attorney, the sheriff, all the law enforcement agencies, judges, anybody that's a player in public safety sits on this coordinating council. I pitched to them an idea at our meeting this month. I emailed the documents out of the draft idea, and it's forming a citizen-driven public safety committee that is in concept right now. It's about 20 members, divided into 5 subcommittees that look at the jail, the patrol function of the sheriff's office, community corrections, the DA's office, the juvenile department, and they look at the structure, how it's set, the facilities, the layout, the budget. It's citizens going through how those departments function and how they're structured and how ultimately they're paid for. And I want this committee to look at that and provide recommendations back to the Board of Commissioners for potential reforms or changes that can create efficiencies, and what is the outlook for long-term funding. The idea is looking 10, 20 years out. What do we want our public safety entities to look like, and how do we want to pay for them? The Board of Commissioners tried an initiative out in East County with the first of what was planned to be 3 to 4 public safety districts as a way to fix the funding issues within the patrol function of the sheriff's office. That failed miserably. It was initially, it came out of a demand from the people, and it was very people driven. The Board of Commissioners took it over, worked really hard, had tons of town halls, and tried to get the information out, and it still failed. And there was some issues, and I understand people's apprehension. I don't think that we did necessarily a good enough job of explaining the bigger picture and what we wanted to do, and people really saw that why is one part of the county having to pay more than another part of the county, without people realizing that this was the first district and we wanted to replicate around the county, which is a common thing in Oregon and in Klamath County. Don't quote me on this, but we have something like 39 special districts between road districts and fire districts and sanitation districts. And these are all born out of that Measure 5, Measure 50, with no way to influence the property tax. You have to create a district to pay for something, a museum district, a library district. And in some ways that can be good, in some ways it can be bad. It can be good because now you've got dedicated funding for that thing, and the people got to choose that's what they wanted to pay for. When it comes to something really expensive like law enforcement, I think that's a much harder sell to people because it is a bigger dollar amount to pay for, whether it's through a district or through a county-wide tax. So circling back, I've got this citizen-led public safety committee concept that I want to develop, because at some point we are going to have to make the really hard decision of asking the citizens for more money and or significantly reducing services. Mm-hmm. And before that happens, I want as much citizen involvement as humanly possible. And I want, if we're going to try to pass additional funding, I want a group of citizens to really have looked at this, take some ownership of it, and help us with it. So that's one piece of it. And then on the general fund side, man, we have cut everywhere that we can. Through budget this year, we demanded all departments present 30% cuts. Now that some departments just can't sustain a 30% cut. Some departments are a single person department and their services are required. So we couldn't cut everything, but everywhere we could cut, we did cut. And that still left us over $1 million upside down in our general fund. Federal dollars are a worry right now. The money we get for secure rural schools, which goes into our road fund, is in question, and that's $5 million, $6 million. So that is the fear on the patrol sheriff's office side. And then there's also an argument: do you even use those dollars to pay for the sheriff's office? Because those are dollars to fix our roads and our bridges and our infrastructure. So I hope you can edit this. So moving forward, yes, we do need to find fixes for our budget. I hope that this citizen committee can provide some solutions. But in the long run, It might be that we just have to reduce services for the public to see that this is not a mismanagement of money. It's a lack of revenue over time with the property taxes being flat and the cost of doing government continuing to rise.
Sure. How much does we have a ton of public land in Klamath? How much does that affect that? I mean, you're talking about bringing in revenue, but I'm assuming there's no taxes for all that public land.
There are taxes for that public land, not in the sense that you or I pay taxes or any of the viewers pay taxes. The federal government owns something like 70% of Klamath County between the Fremont Wainema National Forest, the Bureau of Land Management, the national parks, refuges. That's all federal land. They don't pay a tax rate. They do give us a payment in lieu of taxes, which I looked at a breakdown and it's like 0.03 cents per thousand or something ridiculous like that. They pay hardly nothing. So we don't generate revenues from all of these lands. However, we do have to provide services to all of those lands. Our police are out there patrolling those lands. Our fire and our ambulance crews and our search and rescue crews respond into all of these lands. We have to maintain the roads that give access to these lands. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 where we have to pay for all of this, but we don't receive the same revenue returns from the federal government. And then the federal government creates all the policies regarding recreation, how the land can be used, and natural resources, and what can be harvested and sold. So we really get put in a bind with, again, having to provide services to these areas, but not necessarily being compensated by the federal government for the services that we provide.
If a picture says 1,000 words, imagine the story. 24 frames a second. Can tell about your business. 40 Deuce Films.
You mentioned the secure rural schools. Did you say that money goes into the road fund?
It does.
Why?
So secure rural schools dollars are for doing that. They are for initially for counties to, let me back up. That is a very large fund. Counties receive a portion of that. The state receives a large portion of that goes into the schools fund, which then the state divvies out to the different schools. At the local county government, we don't provide funding for the county school district. That is a state function. However, part of that money gets parsed out and sent to counties as well. And different counties get different amounts this was all based out of replacing timber revenues when those declined. And so the money that the county gets is specifically to maintain the roads for the rural schools. You think it like the path from the child wherever they live to the schools. So we need to maintain the roads. We need to maintain the safety and security of those roads so we can use those dollars to provide maintenance on the roads and infrastructure on the roads and patrol of those roads and the areas in between. So it's very restricted in what we can do with the SRS dollars. Our county had a large road fund historically. We have a lot of roads in Klamath County that the county controls, and a lot of these roads provide like farm to market access, commerce access. So it's important that we maintain these. We take those SRS dollars and put them in the road fund every year because there's a roughly $70 million in that account, and we get the interest off it. It grows. So, which can sound great to the public, like, wow, we have $70 million in reserves and it grows. Well, one, it doesn't grow when we take $5.5 million out of it, like we did this year to prop up the sheriff's office. And two, it's finite. Like that 70 million sounds like a lot, but a $5 million bridge one summer, $5 million for the sheriff's office, You take $10 million out in a summer, in 5-6 years, there's no money left in there. So those are restricted funds, and we can only use them in certain areas.
Mm-hmm. You, as commissioner, so I know public safety, and thank you for sharing all of that. But what are some of the other things you're looking forward to working on as commissioner over the next couple of years?
So the other areas I'm passionate about is agriculture, and our agriculture community and our producers. It is a huge part of our economy. Oregon State did that study last year, and I forget the exact amount, but it was, $5.5 million turning over 8 times in our economy. Like, it's a huge piece of not just who we are culturally, but economically, everything. It's also, I have roots there. I grew up in the project and graduated from Lost River High School. My wife works in the ag community, and I attend all of the water users meetings that I'm able to get to. So I'm very passionate about our ag community and supporting them. They got some really promising news here recently out of the federal government with regards to water and discretion. And it looks like that this administration is going to prioritize water deliveries for our producers, which is good and a very optimistic thing for Klamath County and our producers. However, that it's the pendulum swinging, and right now it's swinging in the direction of our producers, but things need to be done over the next 4 years to codify some of that. So we stop having these massive swings of no water, lots of water, no water, lots of water. Where do I see my role in all of that? Well, as a county commissioner, influencing federal policy is not easy. But I can be part of the coalition. I can be educated. I can continue to educate the public, and then I can work on the things that I can work on. Just about 2 weeks ago, myself and my predecessor, Dave Hensley, went with the water users up to Salem to introduce their new director to a plethora of lawmakers. And at the same time, we all hit these lawmakers on issues regarding power, the cost of power, how power is delivered, and how that affects our producers. We talked about current legislation with regards to diversion points of water and how that's going to affect our producers. So I think, although the bigger federal water picture is very difficult, it's very layered, it's been going on for decades, there are lots of things from the local level that we can advocate for our producers, for not just our ag producers, but our timber producers and all of our natural resource producers, because we are a very natural resource driven economy. It's part of the culture, and it's ingrained in who we are as people from Klamath.
What do you think in your background has helped you most I'm talking about like leadership traits or things that you've learned. What in your background has helped you the most with being a commissioner so far?
My time spent in the military, my 2 decades in the Marine Corps, taught me discipline, perseverance, and probably the biggest thing is integrity. Um, I, I I think that those that serve in these positions need to be loyal to our Constitution and the process. It's really easy, I think, for somebody to get power and try to use that power to influence things that they're passionate about, and maybe forget that there is a process. And so that integrity piece of respecting our process, respecting the rules, and making sure we're doing things the right way and not using the power that you have nefariously or to benefit yourself in any way. So the integrity piece, huge. My time as a law enforcement officer, it's very weird that I talk about this with friends and family, that being a commissioner is sometimes not a whole lot different than being a cop. And in this way, you're constantly switching gears. As a police officer, you might respond to a crash, and then 10 minutes later turn and respond to a deceased person, and then an hour later turn and respond to a domestic violence call. So you're constantly switching gears to maybe high stress down to empathy, back up to high stress. It's and being a commissioner is much of the same. As the day comes at you, you're going to have people that are angry that you weren't expecting. You're going to have meetings that went sideways that you didn't expect, and you're not necessarily, you don't know what's in front of you each day. So you're constantly switching gears, and each time you're switching gears, you get a problem set put in front of you, and you have to use the tools that you have, your education, your life experiences, your understanding of government, in order to apply those tools and do what you can to either stabilize or fix the problem. And so there's a lot of overlap or comparisons to the job in law enforcement to politics in this weird way. So both of those careers, the integrity, the leadership, the high level leadership that I experienced in the Marine Corps, and following process and maintaining a process, and then the time in law enforcement of constantly switching gears and having empathy. I think when I was in the military, I was the type of person that probably lacked some empathy. Like, I was constantly training to go fight and win wars. But then when I became a police officer, you deal with situations that are very sad, the loss of loved ones, and then many a times you're the only person there. And so I had to learn to be an empathetic and understanding person, and how to connect with people. And those tools have definitely helped me as a commissioner, to where I try to actively listen and look at people and hear what they're saying, rather than just fire out solutions for people.
Going back to, you mentioned the idea of this citizen board for public safety. I know that there's quite a few opportunities to get involved and have your voice heard on different committees and advisory boards. What kind of people, or are there specific backgrounds you look for when you're adding people to those committees?
Whoever's willing. I think that it's difficult to get people to engage with government. And one of the first points that came up when I was talking about this is, good luck getting 20 people to be involved in this. And I'm an optimist, so I hope that that people see the issue and want to be involved, and want to have a voice in what the future of public safety looks like in Klamath County. Specifically, what we're looking for, I would like to see a big cross section of the county. I want people from North County. I want people from East County, West County, people from high socioeconomic status, low socioeconomic status, people that know nothing about government. And we embedded this under the local public safety council, because there does need to be some steering that happens, right? If we get 20 people in the room that are not experts on the laws or the regulations or how things need to be delivered, they might come up with some great ideas that are just illegal, right? So we have the experts on the public safety committee, i.e. the district attorney, the sheriff, the police chief, judges, that can guide these subcommittees and say, well, you can't do that, you can do this, and kind of keep them within the rails of what authorities government actually has. So I would like to see a diverse cross-section of people from the county. However, I'm willing to take, if we can get 20 people, I will be very excited. This goes to something that is frustrating in government. And I talked about it a little bit earlier, that if I had a wish, it would be that early education, high school education, taught more about local government. And I think people just don't know enough about it, and they're not engaged in it. So all of these committees we have, it's really hard to fill the seats on these different advisory committees. And that's frustrating, because as a commissioner, that's what I rely on. I rely on a group of citizens looking at an issue and then giving us advice in our decision-making process. And, that we need that. You don't want humans, individuals, just making decisions in a vacuum without really having looked at the issue or the scenario and focused on it. And that's what these advisory groups are for. None of us have the bandwidth to in-depth study every issue that faces us. So we have to rely on citizens that want to be involved in government. And if I had the ability to get everybody educated on how government works and get everybody involved, I would absolutely do it. But it's difficult, and I understand. I said this during my campaign. People elect me, people like me, to do that for them, right? They're raising their families. They have their jobs. They have their careers. They're going about their day-to-day business, and it's difficult to cut out time to go sit on a government committee. I understand that. But if you're out there and you're retired, or you've got some extra time on your hands, I beg and plead, please join one of our citizen committees. Please get involved with county government. Please make your voice heard back to your elected officials.
Great. Thank you. We're getting close to ending our time, but I do have one question. I have a couple questions left, but what was it like campaigning?
Difficult. A lot of an emotional roller coaster. That's the best way to put it. You're hyper aware to every rumor, every media piece that comes out, and you overanalyze it. And it's a competition. It's just like a sporting event or anything else. It's a competition. You're there for a reason. You're there to win. So there's a lot of ups and downs. And you get every flavor of thought and opinion. You learn a lot about yourself, because people tell you a lot about yourself that you never maybe realized. So a lot of introspection, a lot of opinions, a lot of emotional roller coaster. But I think it is a necessary process. And I will tell you that the campaign shaped me into a better politician. It pointed out areas I need to work on. It pointed out deficiencies that, when I was asked a question that I didn't know the answer to, I needed to go back and learn more about that specific issue or topic. It made me more aware of how I present, the words that I say, how they can be taken in the public eye. So you learn to be more careful in how you say things and what you say things, and the impact your words might have on other people or other decision makers. And it prepares you for the stress and the mental gymnastics that this job is. If you can make it through the campaign, then you can probably do the job.
Were you the kind that was reading Facebook comments during that, or were you the kind avoiding Facebook comments?
I was definitely reading. And even to this day, I still do. I engaged during my campaign. I would engage in social media comments, which can be difficult. You get in back and forth. I would much prefer in face or over the phone. But during the campaign, again, you're hyper aware. You want to set your way of thinking straight. You don't want people to label you or put words in your mouth that you don't think belong there. So I was very reactive on social media. Now I read. I read all of the community pages. I go through and read the stuff. So I'm still understanding what the people are excited about, what they're frustrated about. But now I don't get in the comment back and forth, because I feel like that is kind of a never-ending rabbit hole once you start down it. And it's really easy, and you can look silly and unprofessional pretty quickly. So yeah, during the campaign, I was definitely involved in it, but I learned lessons too. And it made me a better user of social media as a politician now.
Great.
From my perspective.
Perfect. All right. Last three questions. If I gave you $250,000 to use by the end of the day to make a difference, what would you do in our community?
I would take that money and I would plug it into scholarship endowments at Klamath Community College. I think that the future of Klamath County is in our youth and in our children, and the skill sets that they bring here and what makes them want to stay here and continue to build on our community. And I think that investing in our young people at that kind of targeted age and giving them opportunities to learn and grow within our systems and our community was, if I had $250,000 free, here you go. Let's give it to young people who want to stay in Klamath, learn trades in Klamath, and contribute back to our community.
Great. If somebody was coming from out of town and wanted to experience the best of Klamath and you were planning their day, what would you do with them?
Well, when I've had this experience before, friends of mine that I served with in the military have come here to visit, and we plan out days and take them to see all parts of our county. I always try to get people to see Crater Lake if the weather's right and it's the right time of year. It's a beautiful gem in our county. Um, and at the same time, I try to, where I live, go through East County. I'm taking a friend on a drive next week, and we're going to go to Gerber, and we're going to go to the Mitchell Monument, and we're going to come back up through the Sprague River Valley, and the views that you get from Sprague River as you're coming back toward Chiloquin of Crater Lake and Mount Thiessen. It just shows the beauty of our county. So yeah, I would take people on a drive to see all of the beauty that Klamath County has to offer.
Perfect. What is one small change you think people could do to make a difference in our community?
Get involved in county government in some way, shape, or form. Yes, being on a committee, that is great. But even if you're not on a committee, jump on the county website and just read through what the county, if you get on the county's website, you can learn quite a bit about county government, the departments we have, what the departments do, how the government arm is structured when we have public meetings, how we decide on issues. But get involved in how our government works, how the process works, because that the policies are what is going to shape the future for all of us.
Great. Thank you for your time today. And thanks for stepping up to be a commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you to our sponsor, 40 Deuce Films, and we'll see you next time.